We are back in session. We are on item 14, final actions, and this is item B, Councillor Winter, O-3.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is amending the municipal solid waste collections and disposal rate table to incorporate residential rate decreases in the rate appendix. And I have been working with the administration, and I think we've got a presentation. And just to remember, this is in regards to the transfer station that was going in for the previous administration on Edith, and then the new administration comes out, and I'm not sure if that was a correct site anyway, came in and stopped it. And so the city has been collecting $1.21 every month to help pay for this, and so this resolution was to stop that payment. And there's also got about $3 million saved up, and so the administration has an alternative plan, and I think they're going to talk about it, the alternative plan.
And who will be presenting from the administration?
Mr. President, I thought I had seen Matthew Whalen back there, but I'll start.
Is he on his way?
He might be on his way. Let me say to...
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. President, and we have been working with Councillor Winter on this project. Let me give you a bit of an overview very quickly, and then when Matthew walks in, if you have any specifics, you might want to ask him. So the rate increase that was imposed by the council several years ago was to build a transfer station and a convenience center at the Edith site there in the Edith and Candelaria area, or excuse me, Comanche. It was also to build a maintenance facility and to build a new administrative building for the solid waste department. When the mayor took office, one of his first actions was to, because of neighborhood concerns, et cetera, was to terminate the program related strictly to the convenience center and the transfer station. We then went to work to restructure the program and to look at it from basically from a common sense perspective, and that is to look at how do we manage the entire system citywide and look at the areas of growth and where growth is going to occur. In the meantime, through this conversation, Councillor Winter had introduced this resolution, so we kept him and have been keeping him informed as we moved to this process. Basically, what we announced several weeks ago was that we were going to build a facility at the landfill that would basically take all of the trucks that are on the west side of the river would go directly to the landfill. It made no sense for them to be collecting refuse on the west side and then coming back to the east side to a transfer station and then to take the trash back to the west side. So the idea was to look at that and say, okay, that area of the city is the growth area, number one. Number two, we have land available at the landfill where we can actually build a facility to maintain approximately 25 to 35 refuse vehicles that are all actually collecting all of the refuse on the west side. And it also gives us an opportunity to expand that site in the future as the west side grows. So that was one piece of the puzzle. The next piece was to then look at land that might be available for us to site strictly a transfer station, knowing that at some point we are going to have a place where we can obviously take the east side, if you will, refuse and put it into an 18-wheeler and transport it to the west side, because obviously it makes more sense. We have several pieces of property that we've identified as potential sites. We are looking at those sites as we speak to basically look at the neighborhood issues, to look at the transportation issues associated with the sites, and then ultimately ensuring that we can actually build the facility within the budget that we have for that program. Those sites are going to be made, or we're going to give you that information here very shortly as we move through the process of evaluating each of the sites. Then the last piece of the program is to actually build a new maintenance facility at the site there in Edith, because we know that inevitably we will have to have a major operations there, simply because that's the already established part of the city, and to look at refurbishing the administrative building, and quite frankly, looking at the entire site It is a site that is one of our older facilities. It needs to be rehabbed. We also have a recycling center, if you will, there where folks drop off recyclables right off of Edith. So our agreement with the neighborhoods was that we would build a better facility and take all the recycling and put it inside the fence, if you will, so that it's not an eyesore to the neighborhood, to build a new fence around the entire site to basically keep all of the neighborhood looking as clean as possible, and then to look at the actual facilities. So all that is moving as originally planned in the original rate increase you all proposed. And we're hopeful that we'll have a piece of property that we can bring to you all and to the community that will, I think, meet the needs of our growth in the future and continue to move this program forward. And with that, I still don't see if...
He's here.
Okay, Matthew's back here, so I'll have Matthew add any other details if I have missed anything.
Director Gordon,
Yeah,
proceed.
Council President, Council Sanchez. As Mr. Rao was saying, we have pretty much just taken the original plan and just deconstructed it to reevaluate and make it more of a common sense approach. I apologize, I was in the elevator. I'm running down here. But if you guys have any questions, we really have just kind of moved forward with how we're going to do that.
Councilor Winter?
Thank you, Mr. President. And just one question is the east side sites, and you don't have to tell them what they are, but are they by neighborhoods? Or are there going to be any issues with neighborhood concerns on those?
Council President Sanchez and Councilor Winters, what we did is we went ahead and we just looked at the whole east side as a whole from a fresh look. We had the same criteria that we had the first time, which was to try and stay away from neighborhoods and to stay in industrial areas as much as possible. These locations are in industrial areas, and the proximities to neighborhoods aren't very close, although there may be a couple sites that may be near a neighborhood. However, they may score as well on the scoring matrix for our sites because there's a big criteria of how each location is scored, and that's one thing that's taken into consideration.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, I may have missed something here, but I'm trying to see, and I did look at this last night. But anyway, so are we increasing or decreasing the amounts by 64 cents with this bill?
Mr. President, yeah, if
Councilor
this
Winter.
bill passed, then it would decrease that amount. And the reason I was doing that is because I didn't know the administration had another plan. So we were collecting all this money with no plan. So now they have a plan. So can I ask one more
Yes,
question?
go and proceed.
When do you think you're going to be able to let the council know about the sites that you picked so that, and when we're moving forward on it?
Council President Sanchez and Council Winters, as soon as we evaluate in the administration, we make a final selection, we should be able to move forward as soon as possible.
Because I want to defer this bill one more time for 3 months or so. So would that give you plenty of time to have a plan, the final plan?
We'll identify a site by then.
Does that work okay?
And that's basically what we're waiting. That's, go ahead.
Mr. President and Councilor Winter, obviously we've been working together on this and where you continue to want to make sure that we all are on the same page. So a deferral for 90 days would obviously help us finish the details of what we're putting together, and you'll know about the site sooner than that. So,
Councilor Benton.
Just a quick question. I know that under the previous plan, quite a bit of money was paid to the consultant for design. Are we able to salvage any of that work?
Council President Sanchez and Councilor Benton, yes. As far as the administration building and the maintenance facility at the Edith location, we are preserving all of those plans and trying to keep it as close as possible to what was originally designed. What we did was we just removed the transfer station footprint right off of the site, and we're going forward with what was already there so that we don't have to do any redesign. It's already taken the comments from the general public, and we're trying not to change it at all.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Winter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to appreciate the work of the administration working through this process. And I think that eventually it's going to be a really good plan. So I'll make a motion for deferral.
Second.
We have a motion and a
Um,
second for deferral. Did you want
six-
that for 90 days or 60 days?
So apparently I was just told it dies at 90 days, so can we do it 60 days?
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a 60-day deferral on O-3. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now under item C, Councilor Borrego, Committee Substitute O-18.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a floor substitute, I guess, committee substitute, amending 9.828 and 9.899 and Section 8.2-1 to add or increase the amount of a fine associated with littering offense and to incorporate civil penalties. Basically, what we're doing is we looked at several different cities. We looked at Phoenix and we looked at Denver. And so we looked at southwestern cities and we compared them to our fines. And we found that we were kind of sort of way behind. And so basically what we're doing, and we wanted to go through the city process, but we found that we weren't able to do that because we don't have the administrative capabilities in meeting with the police department to actually track, when people have a first offense or second offense or, so, and so the state does that for us. And so basically what we're doing is really just increasing the fines, and it'll be for the first, second, and third offense. And the maximum is $500, but we're going from $150 to $250, and then $50 above that for each. So I just make a motion for a due pass.
Well, first you've got to move the committee substitute, so we have a motion
I'm
and a
sorry, I
second
need to move the committee substitute.
first, and then
Do
you got a
pass.
motion and a second, and now we are on the floor substitute
It's a
for
floor
O-.
substitute, Mr.
Yeah, we
President.
had to introduce the bill, and we can, okay, now you want to move the floor substitute? That's
Okay, I
next.
move the floor substitute.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Benton for floor substitute O-18. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed? We are back on the bill. And Councilor Jones?
Thank you. Just a question out of curiosity. Does anyone know how much we collect in littering fines now on an annual basis?
Councilor Borrego?
Actually, Counselor Jones, I met with the police regarding that very issue. And I thought Deputy Chief might be here tonight, Medina, but what he told me is that it varies. It really varies, and it varies based on the season. So like in the summer, they get more than they do during the winter, which, makes sense because people are outside more. But they didn't really have, a true count. So that was the answer that I got from the police.
And if I may, so,
Councilor Jones?
thank you. So do the state police find them? How do we know?
Yeah, and that's the issue. Originally, when we drafted the bill, we wanted to try to ensure that the funds were going to go to the city, but as I mentioned earlier, we don't have an administrative process that would track them. The state does, so we just removed that whole piece entirely, and now it's actually going to the state.
Councilor Jones?
So has anyone heard from the state? Do they think that this is something that
Yes.
will help?
Yes, we did receive comments back from DOT, and they were supportive of this bill.
Okay.
Councilor Davis?
Thank you. And Councilor Borrego, I think this is a good idea. The more we do to take care of our city is better, and I appreciate you and I had a chance to talk. I just want to plant this seed for later. You and I had a really great conversation, and one of my concerns was as much of a deterrent as a high fine can be for some of these things, the impact of a $250 fine, for example, on most of us compared with a lot of folks that we represent is a big difference between a big inconvenience and food on the table. And, you know, as a former police officer, I can say I've seen police officers use petty things like this as ways to get into other issues, sometimes for people who don't have as many recourses. And we often see these big fines end up being a reason why people without much means, they avoid going to court because they can't afford the fine. They end up with warrants and get caught in a circular process. That said, it's important to have the right deterrent for littering and to keep our city clean. And so I'd love for us to start taking a new look at the way the city addresses our ordinance. I think we did some really great work to decriminalize things that were smaller offenses earlier this year, like marijuana and drug paraphernalia. I'd love for us to take a larger comprehensive look at our entire city criminal code about how we apply those and some more progressive ways of looking at it, like income-based fines and others that I think would apply those penalties going forward. And I appreciate your willingness to talk to us about it today, and I'd love to work with you on that later down the road, maybe with the new council that starts in December.
And I
Councilor
appreciate,
Borrego?
I appreciated our conversation today, Counselor, and I do recognize that you were being very sympathetic to that population, and I think that's very important. I thought a little bit more about it after we talked, and, you know, the state does have the ability, or the judicial system does have the ability to offer community service and other types of venues that would allow a person to, you know, maybe not have to pay that fine. So I think all in all, it kind of maybe, if that helps a little bit. But I think your question about the conversation regarding fines in the future is a definite, because it brought up other issues that we need to discuss.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, Councilor Borrego to close.
I think that this will help all of us to, and when I say all of us, I mean our city population, to ensure that the next time we go to throw something out the window, we think twice about it, and we ensure that we are bringing, you know, pride in our city and making it become a first-class city. And environmentally, you know, you think about where those things might end up, and usually it's back into the river and a lot of, you know, into our drinking water. So I think this is something that is really beneficial for the city.
And Councilor Borrego, because this is a floor substitute, we are required to defer this. So I'd like to move deferral as substituted to the November 19th meeting. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the deferral until the November 19th meeting, say yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. And we are now on item E. We've already completed item D, and that is Councilor Davis, Jones, Pena, and myself. That is Committee Substitute O-27. That is adopting a small wireless facilities regulation to authorize and regulate certain small wireless facility installations within city rights-of-ways or on city-owned utility poles. I move it do pass. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Davis. And I'd also like to move floor substitute O-27.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Borrego for floor substitute O-27. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. We are back on the bill. Do we have anyone signed up to speak? Are there any questions from this council? I'd like to, on this one, I am also going to move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of allowing this ordinance to be adopted the same evening as it is substituted, which would be tonight, and that would require 2/3 votes. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Borrego. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are back on the bill. Councilor Davis?
Mr. President, if I could just ask the administration very quickly, just to, or Mr. Melendez, at some point, we still need to adopt sort of some aesthetic requirements for these new items. Is that something we're doing through this tonight, or is that something that can be done through the regulatory process by the administration later, if we pass this tonight?
Mr. President, Councilor Davis, you're correct. The cities that have adopted this type of legislation so far, many of them have explored aesthetic options. It would bring some uniformity to how these things look on our streets. This particular bill does not have specific aesthetic standards including within it. The planning department has been working on those standards. They're not prepared as of today. There is a placeholder in this bill that specifically sort of gives a nod to the idea that those can be adopted at any time, and they can be adopted as part of the bill or later.
Thank you, sir.
And I have a question for the city attorney, and that is regarding lawsuits that are being filed across the country by different municipalities. Can you briefly give us an update on that?
Absolutely. President Sanchez, members of the council, I realized earlier why I hesitate sometimes before I speak. It's because my natural instinct is to say Your Honor, being in court, so I have to catch myself. But this is right up my alley. So right now we have learned that there are, in the Ninth Circuit in California, there are 3 discrete groups of municipalities that have filed a petition for the Court of Appeals to hear the issue on the FCC had promulgated a rule setting and establishing fees in the rights of way across the country. And the challenge is that decision impedes on what has been traditionally the local government's purview to control their property and their rights of way. That none of those petitions, to my knowledge, have resulted in any orders, but the current legislation has a paragraph in there that contemplates that as the playing field evolves, that the council can come back and amend the ordinance, which it could do anyway. I will definitely keep the council updated on any developments.
I would also like to thank you, Mr. Aguilera, and also Chris Melendres, and also individuals from the industry that are here tonight that have worked with us on this legislation. I think this is going to be a good thing for the community. The residents of our community will have 5G services with these small cells, and I know that legislation was also passed in Santa Fe, and a lot of the language that we have in our bill conforms with the state statutes. But I am very pleased to see that we've all worked together. I know nobody's happy with the end result because everybody had to compromise, but I urge your support. Anybody else that's sponsoring the bill want to make a couple of comments? Oh, we've closed? Go and make a comment? Yeah, we've already closed? Okay, we have a motion and a second for committee substitute O-27 as substituted. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now under item F, O-28. That is Councilor Pena.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. O-28 is repealing the cruising on public street ordinance, and I move it to pass.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Benton. Is anyone signed up to speak? 'Cause I saw House sitting patiently back there for a while now. Okay, we have Lorenzo House Otero and Nelson Gallegos. Thank you for your patience this evening. Welcome.
You didn't have to watch TV, it just got live in here.
You're up, House. You're first.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, Mr. President, Clarissa, members of the council, I thank you for considering this bill. It affects not just the cruising community, but also the businesses downtown, the things that are going on, and it's a God-given right. It's a freedom. The cruising has been a big part of not just my life growing up, but also as our kids that are growing up, they're riding their bikes, they're doing things together. It's a sense of community. We like to come together and make this happen. By repealing this, it just opens up more doors. It opens up avenues, and it's definitely a blessing. So I thank you guys very, very much. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Next
Thank
speaker
you.
is Nelson Gallegos. Welcome, Mr. Gallegos.
Thank you, President Sanchez, Commissioner, Councilwoman Peña, and all council members. I thank you for considering repeal, and the reason being, 8 o'clock. We're older individuals. We're not asking to stay out all night. We're asking for consideration, along with meeting and continuing meeting with the Cruising Commission to make a better cruising bill and make Albuquerque great for all people to enjoy their classic cars out on Route 66. We have one of the longest stretches of Route 66, so for the car enthusiasts to get out and enjoy that. It's a great draw for tourism. Many of us take great pride in our automobiles, and I appreciate your consideration, and I urge you to repeal the existing cruising bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from this council? Councilor Winter?
Mr. President, I want to address this to our city attorney. So are there any unintended consequences by doing that? Because like we have some issues with people speeding up and down Montgomery all hours of the night, and so that we always trying to keep APD really works to try to keep that down. Is that going to affect that happening more so if it's repealed?
President Sanchez, Councilor Winter, I don't anticipate that, but we're happy to look into it and to watch and see if there's any measurable impact on speed, but that would still be a violation of the speeding laws that, the traffic laws that APD would enforce.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Peña to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I know we have a long evening, but I just wanted to say that I think, and I really want to thank Councilor Benton for working with me on this. I really appreciate it. It's been kind of a long haul, just creating the task force and them working to create some recommendations moving forward, and the repealing of this ordinance, as Councilor Winter was asking the question, really the ordinance just had laws that it had items in there that actually focused on a particular group of people, and those traffic laws are already in the books, so I think it was part of the recommendations from the task force, and moving forward, I think that this next bill that we address kind of talks a little bit about what the car community intends to do. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Jeff.
Go and proceed, Jeff.
Councilor President Sanchez, Councilor Peña, members of the council. Yes, you are correct, Councilor, that repealing the cruising ordinance is really removing duplicative provisions in our traffic code that already address irresponsible driving behaviors. There's other moments or there's other provisions throughout the code that address a lot of the same concerns that might be exhibited by other car clubs. But the language that is in the cruising ordinance is duplicating some of that, and so that is one of the reasons for repealing the cruising ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for approval of O-28. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Those opposed? That carries unanimously. We are now on R66. Councilor Peña.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. This is directing the Cultural Services Department to develop a special interest vehicle club registration program. I move a due pass.
We have a motion and a second.
And
is there anyone signed up to speak?
I don't know that they do, but I know that we have, I know that there's an amendment. I think there's one or two amendments that we have. There's two amendments. And I just want to say, I know that one of the news stations had actually did a story on the repealing of the cruising ordinance and this special interest vehicle club recognition program. I just want folks to know that I think there was some misinformation in terms of the story that came out. So hopefully, as part of this, we we actually addressed that. This is something that was, again, another recommendation from the task force that put forward. And this was just primarily, it's a volunteer program, and this is really just kind of trying to put together and have the community come together as a whole so that we can make sure that, they're actually embraced by the city, and we have a special recognition for people, and it's all volunteer if they want to sign up to be in this. It's kind of like a neighborhood association type of recognition. So if they want to be part of it, they can. And this isn't just for car clubs, it's anybody who anyone who really owns a vehicle. So Jeff, please add to that. Thank you.
Go and proceed.
President Sanchez and members of the council, yes, I think the amendments that are proposed here also kind of help solidify and clarify some of the concerns, I guess, regarding the recognition program. And really, a lot of this is trying it's really trying to celebrate. If we go back to the main intention of the Cruising Task Force, it's trying to celebrate cruising as part of our cultural heritage and elevate a lot of the work that our car cruising clubs are already doing in our community.
Okay, we've got two floor amendments. Councilor Pena, do you want to move those, the first one?
Yeah, the First Amendment is on page 2, line 19, add voluntary. That way we clarify that before special interest vehicle club recognition program. These amendments clarify that special interest clubs can voluntarily register their clubs in order to receive incentives offered by the city and that are not required to do so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for floor amendment number 1 to R-18-66. Any questions? See none. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. Councilor Pena, floor amendment number 2.
The next amendment is on page 2, line 23, after the term "the program," insert the following: the program shall be implemented by July 1st, 2019, and this just establishes a date for implementation.
We have a motion and a second for floor amendment number 2 to R-18-66. Any questions? See none. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. Any other comments or questions from the council? Councilor Winter and then Councilor Benton.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the cost of doing this, is that a cost the city's going to take, or are the registration going to cover that cost?
I'll let Jeff answer this question.
Go and proceed.
Councilor President Sanchez, Councilor Winter, in regards to the fees associated with administering the program, we've been in discussion with the Cultural Services Department, who would be administering this program, and we would probably need to look at the budget for 2018 and be sure that we have some funds to administer that. The program, though, from our conversation with Cultural Services, it would be a pretty limited amount of resources that would be needed in order to administer the program. There's a new software company, or a new software called eProval, that is helping kind of administer or streamline the special event permitting process, and that is hoping to kind of open up some resources for hopefully administering this program. But the other fees, I guess, would be for creating the placard. There would be some sort of placard used for identifying these car clubs, and so fees would help cover those placards as well.
Mr. President, so
Councilor.
you say a small, do you have a number? Can you come up with a certain number, or we talking $1,000, we talking $50,000?
Councilor President Sanchez, Councilor Winter, we have not discussed any figures in regards to that.
Mr. President.
Councilor Benton.
If I could also, I do have another amendment, Councilor Winter, and that does address the fiscal aspect of it. So,
Councilor Benton.
So if I will, I'll go ahead and move floor amendment number 3. And what this does is on page 1, line 21, add responsibilities and incentives after the word behavior. Just again, as Councilor Pena was describing, that it's not just about regulating behavior, but it's about expectations of responsibility on the part of the clubs, and also that the intention would be to have some incentives for the clubs to work with cultural services to enhance activities of interest to tourism and culture in the city. On page 2, add a whereas the City of Albuquerque already has a process for permitting special events, and that this resolution is not intended to duplicate that, intended to complement special events permitting process by providing standards for organizing, promoting, attending, and operating events. And then on page 3, line 20, insert the sentence, special interest vehicle enthusiasts who do not affiliate themselves with a particular special interest vehicle club are required to comply with the same provisions of the traffic code as members of the special interest vehicle clubs, just making clear that we're all under that same traffic code. And then on page 3, line 24, as the words, and the fee shall be calculated with the goal of maintaining a balanced city budget. So what we've heard, at least so far, is from Cultural, is that they think they can handle this. We're not talking about a new FTE or anything, or even a half-time to administer this, and that if we're careful and just take a look at what the actual costs are going to be before we determine the fee, that we should be okay. Thank you.
Councilor Borrego.
I understood, and maybe I'm mistaken, but it says that in this amendment on number 3, it says, are required to comply with the same provision. I understood that this was voluntary. So am I misunderstanding?
If I could, Mr. President, I could answer that, Councilor Borrego. This is really in relation to the fact, the previous language, the foregoing language, which says we're all under this same traffic code, whether we're in a car club or not. So that's all it's really saying.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for floor amendment number 3 to R-18-66. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are back on the bill. Councilor Pena to close.
I urge your support.
We have a motion and a second for R-68 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now on item H. Councilor Davis, R-74.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to keep us together, R-78 and O-32 are related to the same item, but R-74 declares the intent of the City Council to hold a hearing, which would be now, to consider the formation of a renewable energy financing district for the purpose of encouraging, accommodating, and financing renewable energy improvements to commercial properties in the City of Albuquerque. I move it do pass.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Benton, and we also have amendments.
Yes, sir.
Councilor
Thank you.
Davis?
Mr. President, I would move floor amendment number 1, which is available in your iPads tonight. This floor amendment just makes some technical cleanup changes that were recommended by Finance and Bond Counsel.
We have a motion and a second for floor amendment 1 to R-74. Any questions? See none. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries. Any more amendments?
No, sir.
We are back in the bill. Does anyone sign up to speak? Any questions? Councilor Davis to close.
We'll make this quick, Mr. President. I urge your support.
We have a motion and a second for R-74 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. And now we are on item I. Councilor Davis, O-32.
Thank you, Mr. President. O-32 is the actual ordinance that approves the formation of the district that we just discussed. I move it do pass.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Benton. And you have a floor amendment also?
Mr. President, I move a floor amendment number 1 that would look exactly like the floor amendment we just approved.
We have a motion and a second for floor amendment number 1 to O-32. Any questions? See none. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries. We are back on the bill. Any questions? Seeing none. Councilor Davis to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have some folks in the audience that could answer questions, but if we don't have any today, I encourage your support. This is an important piece of building our renewable energy infrastructure and our renewable energy workforce in the City of Albuquerque.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for floor amendment number 32 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Is not.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now on item J. Councilor Borrego, O-34.
Mr. President, members of the council, this is basically amending the official zone map from R-1D to R-1B for all or a portion of Track C correction plat of Valle Dorado Unit 3 and Track 6 bulk land plat of the Trails Unit 3A, and to maintain R1 D within 200 feet from the Petroglyph National Monument, and from R-1D to R-1B for the remainder of Tract 2 bulk land plat of the Trails Unit 3A and Tract H plat of Durango Unit 1. And I move a do pass.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for O-34. Any questions from the council? Councilor Benton.
Just quickly, Mr. President, I did ask staff some questions about this because of all the discussion that occurred way back when we were doing the volcano, all the various volcano plans, and asked staff, is this consistent with that? And the answer pretty much was yes, so I do feel comfortable with this amendment. This does allow some latitude, and as did, I think, the previous zoning legislation, to the open space director to make some decision with regard to one of the streets of one of these parcels, but that's also consistent with previous zoning policy, so I support this.
Okay, Councilor Borrego to close.
Move it, urge your support.
We have a motion and a second for O-34. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Councilor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm grateful for our staff. I got a little ahead of us trying to move both of those too quickly. I'm told that the amendment for the ordinance we just mentioned had some different changes, and so we need to go back just to be sure that we're clear on what we voted on. And so I'd make a motion to reconsider O-32.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Benton for reconsideration of O-32. We have a motion and a second.
From Councilor. Urge your support.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We're back on O-32.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I
Councilor
would
Davis.
move O-32.
We have a motion and a second for approval of O-32.
And before we do, Mr. President, we want to clarify that we're going to move floor amendment number 1 that's in your iPad with O-1832. It includes a number of, again, technical changes, but they're different than the ones that were in R-74. This one simply adds program costs, replaces lending with financing throughout the ordinance, and allows the district to cause the special assessment to be filed.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for floor amendment number 1 of O-32. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We're back in the bill. Councilor Davis to
Thank you,
close.
Mr. President. I would urge your support again, and thank you for your patience.
We have a motion and a second for approval of O-32 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Okay, we are now on O-35. Councilor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is relating to the redevelopment, leasing, and sale of Metropolitan Redevelopment Project and the issuance of Metropolitan Redevelopment bonds. And this is one that we heard a few weeks ago. And we have to move this, and we have a floor substitute on this? Okay, so I'll move a do pass.
We have a motion and a second for approval of O-35.
And
Councilor Winter.
And do we have the floor substitute? We're going to have to, since we have a floor substitute, we're going to have to defer this to the next meeting?
I don't believe that's the case if it's involving revenue bonds.
Yeah,
and
Mr.
financing.
Mr. President, Councilor Winter, because this is exempt, because it relates to bonds or bills that relate to the budget, don't require the additional deferral.
So we will have to defer this?
No.
So let's,
No, we
don't have to defer this?
No.
Okay.
So do you want to move the floor substitute?
I'll
Councilor
say,
Winter?
so we have a floor sub, I move the floor substitute for O-18-35.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Jones for floor substitute O-35. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no.
And I think we have folks signed up to speak.
We do. We have one individual signed up to speak, and that is Sue Flint. Want to proceed, Ms. Flint?
Thank you. I'd like to apologize to the last time that I spoke here. I had the flu, so I was extremely cranky that night, and I don't mean, I'm sorry that I kind of like pointed at you. So, on this one here, of course, I am not for this bill, but you already passed it, so I'm just going to speak on it. When the Coronado redevelopment plan went in front of the EPC, I had filed 2 formal complaints of conflict of interest, one with Dan Serrano and one with Ron Bohannon. And as we know, Jim Strozier is one of the agents for Titan, and Jim Strozier is an agent for Dan Serrano. It was Chris Tebow who decided there was no conflict of interest, even though Jim Strozier represented Dan Serrano in the beach and in the Top Golf. Ron Bohannon had a conflict of interest where Chris Tebow said that he didn't have one, or I'm sorry, Derek Bohannon, the EPC commissioner, had one, because Ron Bohannon actually has a partnership with Jim Strozier and with Titan has done business. And I have a problem with these bonds being approved. And one thing that I do want to say is that Councilman Harris had Council Services explain what an MRBs were. And then he tried to say that the money really doesn't exchange hands, but on Titan's website, they proudly announced they received $35 million. And to me, that was saying that they did receive $35 million in financing. But I don't believe that this plan should have ever been passed. It's part of the North I-25 Sector Development Plan that has an amendment that needs to be done when they changed my community from an SU1 to a mobile home park, which we are not. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions on O-35?
Yeah, Mr. President, real quick,
Councilman
we can have the administration explain the second part of this, what we're doing tonight compared to what we did 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Campbell?
David Campbell, City Planning Director. I have Matthew Butkus with our Metropolitan Redevelopment Office. Matt, you want to address the councilor's question?
President Sanchez, Councilor Winter, I believe, I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, but I believe that was the introduction of the resolution for this, and this is simply the ordinance. I believe Ms. Stephanie Yara can fill that in also.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. President, I just want to clarify. So normally when the council issues bonds, it has the prerogative to first put forth an intent resolution. I spoke with bond counsel, and there's not a hard requirement for an intent resolution to be heard before the ordinance. However, it is a way to bring more transparency to a project and allow for further vetting by this council and the citizens. So the reason for the resolution was just to basically declare the council's intent to issue these bonds at a later date, which is today.
Councilor Winter? Any other questions for staff? Any questions? Councilor Winter to close.
Thank you. Urge your support.
We have a motion and a second for approval of O-35 as substituted. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries. We are now on item L. Councilor Jones and myself, floor substitute O-38. Councilor Jones. Okay, that is amending Article 12, Section 2 of the City Charter and amending Article 13, Sections 2, 4, 9, and 10 of the City Charter. I move a do pass. Second. We have a motion and a second. I'd like to move deferral until the November 19th meeting. Second. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Winter. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor for the deferral until the November 19th meeting, say yes. Raise your hand. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now on item M. That is O-39, amending the City of Albuquerque Charter, Chapter 2, Article 4, Part 5, ROA 1994, and Chapter 2, Article 4, Part 8, ROA 1994, to opt into the local elections. I move a do pass. Second. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Jones, and I also move floor substitute for O-39. Second. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Jones. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries, and at this time, I'd also like to defer this item as substituted until November the 19th. Second. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Jones. All those in favor of the deferral till the 19th of November signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now on P1, adopting propositions to be substituted to the voters at the next special local election, proposing to amend Article 16 of the Albuquerque City Charter concerning public financing, and to amend Article 6 of the Albuquerque City Charter concerning charter amendments. I move it do pass. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Davis, and I also move floor substitute for P-1. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Harris. Are there any questions? No, that was a floor substitute. You have the amendment, I think. Is that on this bill? Okay, Councilor Gibson? They're handing out the amendment right now. Councilor Gibson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if we can get some clarification from our city clerk, Duhigg, on this, because we had prepared some floor amendments, but
Madam Clerk Duhigg?
Mr. President, councilors, yeah, I understand that Councilor Gibson's amendment would be keeping the distribution amount for council candidates at the status quo, what it is now, which is $1 per voter. But it also builds in a minimum so that some districts, such as Councilor Pena's district, has significantly less registered voters than other districts. So any district with less than 40,000 voters would get a distribution of $40,000 in lieu of $1 per registered voter. And then it makes essentially the same changes for runoffs as well. It keeps the overall distribution amount at status quo, but sets this floor for districts that have less than 40,000 registered voters.
you get minimum 40,000. So if I may,
Well, let's go and proceed, and let's vote on the floor sub first,
Okay.
and then we can vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the floor substitute, say yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Okay, Councilor Gibson, we're back on the amendment.
all right, I believe our city clerk did a really great job on that, so thank you. This is the Amendment 1 for this, to the floor sub that was just described, and I would be glad to read it if it's, you would like, or,
I think she's already stated that in detail on the amount. She talked about the 40,000, the $1 per registered voter, so she's kind of gone over that.
good.
So I have a question, and I support the reduction of the amount. I'm just not sure if I support it to $1, because we are now consolidating the Albuquerque Public School election and CNM, and the cost to conduct an election may be even higher with additional voters that we're trying to target, or those individuals that are running are trying to target. So I would like to see a change on page 9, line 3, delete the change from $1.75 and put $1.25.
So, and we've talked about this a little bit before, and I believe that we both, yourself, Mr. President, as well as I, have returned our, some portion of our award back to the city clerk at the end of the campaign and election. So I'm hesitant to do that, particularly since we have created a floor of 40,000 for, which would actually affect 3 districts. So I'm hesitant to do that. I would prefer to keep it at $1, but I'd like to hear what other councilors think.
Any other comments from this council? Councilor Davis?
We discussed this last time, so I won't sort of berate the point, but I agree. I mean, I agree with the council president. I think part of the consolidation that's contemplated by the Local Elections Act is designed to increase voter turnout. And I think in particular, that means that, you know, as we increase voter turnout, finding those irregular voters, we need to expand our, candidates need to expand their tools in the toolbox in order to do that in an effective way. So I don't have an issue with the way it was drafted originally. But I do think we start to stretch our resources thin if we reduce it down to a full dollar, which is what it is now. If we had too many more folks to sort of reach out to, especially in these districts with 60, 70,000 residents and over so many, really square miles in some cases, we're talking, for instance, Council Borrego's very large district, down in the Mesa, some of the from Mesa del Sol and others, I think, I hesitate to take it down that much. I'm fine with $1.75, but I would be more supportive of the council president's $1.25 for city council candidates, accounting for the fact that we don't have television.
Councilor Benton, and then Council Vice President
Just
Harris.
procedurally, the amendment was moved and seconded by Councilor Gibson. So what I'm hearing, Mr. President, is you're proposing a possible amendment to the amendment.
Well, I could, or a friendly amendment.
Which I would support that if it's not considered a friendly amendment by Councilor Gibson.
Councilor Winter?
May I?
Council Vice President Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I support going down to $1. I'd probably vote for it if the $1.25 passes too, because what I understand in terms of consolidating the elections and what I've seen when going through voter lists, because I've actually because I went through a recall and a runoff, I might be the most elected city councilor up here. And pardon me, I always say that. I think it's true. Although I haven't served as long, I have to suffer through more elections. And my analysis has shown that almost in all the city elections, school board voters tend to vote in city elections, but not vice versa. So I don't think we're really going to increase the turnout of city council elections by adding school board elections, because the school board voters are already in there. So I don't think that really increases turnout. And I know when I ran my election, it was difficult as heck raising money, and I was able to do it. And the person who encouraged me to run and told me that I'm going to win this race by wearing out my shoes. And that was pretty much it. That's how most people, when they knock off incumbents in the council race, they do it with voter contacts, not with money. And the $1 was enough for Councilor Lewis to beat Councilor Cadigan, who was an incumbent. It was enough for R.J. Berry to beat Martin Chavez, who was an incumbent. So I think the amount of money works if you have the right situations going on in whatever district it is, and you have a good candidate who's working very hard. So I think $1 is enough. So I'll probably vote against the amendment, but I'll vote for it if it passes. I'll vote for the bill if the $1.25.
Okay, let's go and vote first on floor amendment number 1 to floor substitute P-18-1, and then I can add my amendment if that passes. Councilor?
Exactly what it is we're voting on.
Basically, we're voting on what you see in the legislation that Councilor Gibson has introduced, and that's for $1.75, and that'll be reduced to $1. And then $40,000 also as a minimum distribution per candidate for those candidates that have smaller voting base, like Councilor Pena's district.
So we're going to vote on the amendment and then vote on the amendment to the amendment?
Well, you want to go with a friendly amendment to your amendment, or do you want to stick to $1? Okay, let's vote on that first. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for amendment number 1 to floor substitute P-18-1. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed? That carries unanimously. So I'm going to add a floor amendment to amendment number 1, and that basically would be where she had item A on page 9, line 3, delete the change from which is now $1 to $1.25.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Davis. Councilor Gibson?
I just want to say one thing, and that is, there is really no upper limit on this. I mean, we could have potentially 100 candidates out there beating the bushes for $5 bills, and right now, we're doing a little bit better. The city's doing a little bit better, but we all remember the days when it wasn't. And there is probably, really slim days ahead of us in the not too distant future. Everybody's getting at least $40,000 to run your campaign. At least 40,000, and I see that, well, it's just that, I think $1 per voter, except for the three least populated districts, is fair and enough. So I returned over $9,000 this past election, and I hate to see us go, to such an extreme that we really regret what we've done in the next few years. So that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Pena.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a question. So Councillor Gibson did the math and came up with this amount of 40,000 to each of those council districts that, okay, so you did the math. So how does it change that number in terms of fairness if it goes to 125? Should that amount be increased? Should it?
Yes, Mr. President, Councilor Pena, councilors, yes, you're absolutely right. I think if that amount changes to 125, then the floor should change to 50,000. If we're going to if the point is to maintain parity among the district races, then that would be an appropriate change. That said, this is all council's prerogative. I'm not urging one way or the other. I think council knows what's best for council. So it's a policy decision for you all.
So, Mr. President, I would just say that if it's going to be changed, then we would need to change that to 50 in terms of the parity, and then if it remains at the dollar, the 40 is fine.
And I don't support the 50. I would go to 45,000. I think it's more in line with what we are looking at. Councillor Jones?
I'm sorry, I need to make a statement here. Sorry. If we as a candidate are haggling over taxpayers' money to run for office because we don't want to knock on doors or whatever it is that we think we have to have $50,000, $60,000 to run a campaign on taxpayers' money, then perhaps we should learn to go out and knock on doors and ask for money to run for office. I mean, I'm sorry. I understand the need for public financing in some people's minds, and I get it, but I believe haggling over the amount of money that the taxpayers are going to pay for a candidate for whom they might not vote is ludicrous. If you really want to run and you can't walk the streets and knock on doors to raise money, then you better go knock on doors and ask for votes. This is just ludicrous.
Councillor Davis and then Councillor Pena.
Madam Clerk, I don't want to put you on the spot, but before you were here during the last time we did this, Councilor Harris and I were working on some of these. We had some fairly exhaustive late-night conversations, and you were part of that with us, about the Public Finance Fund, and we had a whole bunch of formulas to help us ensure that the dollar amounts and the distributions ensured that the fund was viable. And it's not a concern so much in years where even-numbered city councilors run, but that impact for odd-numbered years when the mayor candidates run really hits the fund. Has your office been able, with these amendments, to look at the math on how, say, $40,000 or $50,000, say, in each district, or what this might do in terms of the fund, and is it viable?
Yes, Mr. President, Councilor Davis, councilors. Yes, we have run that analysis, and the numbers that we were using to run that analysis was using the assumption of it going up to 175 for both mayoral and council candidates. So in 2021, which would be that next cycle, based on past election data, the assumption was the overall drain on the account would be about $2 million. But that overall, and so right now it's about $3.7 million.
Yeah, as we build in and build
Even
out.
after that, it would go to about $3.2 million. So the fund can sustain it.
Thank you. But thank you, Mr. President. That was my concern, in which case I don't necessarily have an objection.
Councillor Pena?
Thank you, Mr. President. The reason I was asking is because, I've said this ad nauseum is because I've never taken public financing. I've always raised the dollars to run for office because the math just doesn't make sense in terms of the amount of voters. And each of the council districts get a different amount every time they run for public financing based on the number of voters, even though we have the same amount of population with a deviation of like 5%, 5 to 4%. So we're targeting the same voter base and the same population, but we just get, if you just do a mailing or two, that can eat up the $23,000 that I get in my district in particular. So my only question is with the amendment that just passed, I'm fine with that amendment, but there was a mathematical equation to come up with that. So once we change it to $1.25, the equation changes. And all I'm talking about is fairness in an underserved district.
Yes, Mr. President, Councilor Pena, councilors, that is my thinking on this as well, is that you all have to work just as hard, but with the current formula, some folks get more in public financing than others. So this was really just an attempt to bring fairness and parity to candidates running in all the districts.
And also for the record, Councillor Jones, the residents of Albuquerque voted for a charter amendment to support public financing, and that's why we have the public financing structure in place. But again, I mean, I'm not sure how many voters you have in your district, Councillor Pena. If there are 25,000 voters at $1.25, that'd be about $45,000 anyway. But I'm not sure what number we're going to use as a base number. But let's go and vote on first floor amendment number 1 to the floor amendment, and that's basically...
Mr. President, just to be clear for record-keeping purposes, this would actually be Amendment 2, since Amendment 1 was already voted upon.
No,
the bill has been amended.
maybe an amendment to the floor amendment.
The floor amendment already passed, and so it's too late to amend it.
Okay, so
your
floor amendment number 2
2.
to floor substitute P-18-1. Okay, let's go and move that. All those in favor of floor amendment number 2 to floor substitute P-18-1, raise your hand and say yes. Yes? Those opposed? No. That fails on a 2 to 7 vote. Okay, we are back in the bill.
3. I'm
Three?
sorry. 3 to 6.
Okay, all those in favor say yes. Those opposed? Okay, it fails on a 3 to 6 vote. Thank you, Councilor Borrego. Okay, now we need to move deferral as substituted and amended until the November 19th meeting. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously, and we are now on item Q, O-42, that is authorizing the issue and sale of $1,569 million City of Albuquerque short-term lodgers tax improvement revenue bonds,
Mr. President?
taxable series.
I think we skipped the election resolution, which was the next item after the P bill. It's R83.
Okay, let's go back to then, my apologies, getting tired. What's that? Okay, we are now on R-83. That is concerning a special municipal election to be held in the City of Albuquerque on February the 5th of 2019, submitting to the vote of the qualified registered electors at such special municipal election questions, amending the Albuquerque City Charter. I move it do pass. We have a motion and a second, and there is also a floor substitute. I move floor substitute R-83. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Winter. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That passes, and we now have a floor amendment. You may. Council Vice President.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, we were chatting at dinner about the difficulty that we had last time for redistricting and the calendar, and that there might be a way to kind of squeeze these deadlines to make redistricting possible. Have we done that here?
Mr. President, Councilor Harris, councilors, yes. That is really the biggest substantive change in the floor substitute for both this bill and the one before, is that originally we had proposed extending the qualifying period for council candidates to 60 days. If we do that, then we're going to run into a problem when it comes to redistricting, because the redistricting data comes in late March of 2019. No, I'm sorry. 2021, yeah.
2021, yeah.
Yes. But If we had that extension of the qualifying period, it would be starting right when the data would come in, and therefore we would be in the position where we would have to delay redistricting for a year because that process had already begun. This actually happened in 2011, and there was a federal lawsuit about it. So that's the main change that's made in here. In order to try to carve out, we ended up carving out about a month and a half to get redistricting done, which means you are going to see a lot of me right around then. But I think it's doable.
And Madam Clerk, I believe it was Judge Nash in the State District Court as well as Judge Browning in Federal District Court. And they allowed us to move the redistricting from, I guess it was 2011 to 2013. However, is your recollection by reading the record that Judge Browning said, don't let this happen again? Okay, so yeah. I guess we kind of have to do it in 2021. We have to get the redistricting done, and these new deadlines will allow us to do that, although it's going to be a push.
It'll be fun.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is identical, I believe, to the one we were just looking at. This is floor amendment 1. It does exactly the same as the amendment for the proposal. So I'm going to move floor amendment number 1 to floor sub R 1883.
We have a motion and a second by Councillor Harris for floor amendment number 1. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed, that carries unanimously. We are back on the bill, and I will also move deferral as substituted and amended until the November 19th meeting. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? See none, all those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no, that carries. Okay, we are back on item Q, O-42. That is authorizing the issue and sale of $1,569,000 City of Albuquerque short-term lodgers tax improvement revenue bonds, taxable series 2018, for the purpose of designing, developing, constructing, reconstructing, rehabilitating, renovating, modernizing, enhancing, and otherwise improving the city civic plaza and Isotopes Park. I move a do pass. We have a motion and a second, and I'd also like to move floor substitute O-42. We have a motion and a second by Councillor Jones for substitute O-42. Any questions? See none, all those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. We are back on the bill. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I urge support. We have a motion and a second for O-42 as substituted. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries. We are now on the final item on the bill. On the next bill, R-82, Councillor Pena.
Thank you, Mr. President. R82 is directing the Planning Department to collaborate with the City Council Office and other local and state government agencies to convene a micro enterprise development fair. And I am going to, this is just something that's just, you know, we have a lot of small businesses in the City of Albuquerque. I think it kind of complements some of the work the administration's doing in terms of fees for small businesses and really trying to incubate some of these businesses within the City of Albuquerque. And, you know, through our efforts and some of the work we've done, we've noticed that there's been some challenges in order to do that. So in order to help our small micro business economy thrive, I think this is an important tool for us to use. And Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Let's go and move the bill first. Councillor Pena.
I move.
We have a motion and a second for a do pass of R-82. Jeff, go and proceed.
Councillor or President Sanchez, Councillor Pena, I just want to remind you that there's a floor amendment to change from the Planning Department to the Economic Development Department.
You're correct. So I don't have that in front of me, so if you want to read that.
Yes, so the amendment is on page 1, line 2, 27, and 39, page 2, line 1, and page 4, line 6, replace planning with economic development throughout the bill.
I move that amendment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for floor amendment number 1 to R-82. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries. We are back on the bill. Any questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you. In the write-up, and this is just I hope, informative. One of the write-ups says, this is convening a fair like this would provide an opportunity for low-income individuals to learn more about the registration process, how to secure microenterprise. Is this limited to a particular income level, or is it for everyone?
Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's for everyone. Jeff will elaborate on that.
Jeff, go and proceed.
Councilor President Sanchez and Councilor Jones. No, the intention behind creating the Microenterprise Development Fair is to really identify that there's a continuum of different size businesses that exist in Albuquerque, and there's a certain type of synergy that could exist between all of them. And so when we're convening different agencies and different groups, the intention is to invite the rest of the business community, very much the brick and mortar business community as well, to be involved in that. And so microenterprises might be lower income folks, but it is intended to support all businesses of all sizes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Pena to close.
I urge your support.
We have a motion and a second on R-82 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. And I'd like to encourage those individuals that have not gone out to vote to please go out and vote tomorrow. Tomorrow is Election Day. And if there is no further business before this council, this meeting is adjourned.